Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video we're going to be talking about ArrayLists. So previously we've been working with arrays that look like maybe like this. String items equals Bob, Kate, Sammy. So this is an array and it just has 3 items. And we know how to work with these. We can just use, for example, we can loop through it and we can print out every item inside of our array. String. And we run and we get this output. But suppose we wanted to create an array such that we could add items to the end of the array without having to allocate a new one. For example, with our current array we couldn't do this. If we tried to do this, our program would crash because we had only allocated basically 3 blocks of memory when we first started our program. So we try this and we get exception in thread main, array index out of bounds exception, because, this item's it's equivalent to doing this is equal to new string 3, like that. So to solve this problem, we're going to basically use ArrayLists. So ArrayLists are very similar to arrays, except that they grow automatically whenever we want to add any more items. So for example, we have our items array right here, and if we want to add a 4th item, what we could do is we could do this. Items is equal to new string, and we could make it hold 4 blocks of memory now, and now we would just copy over. Okay, let's do this. Copy is equal to items, and then we would just do copy.length, and then we would do items at I is equal to copy at I, and then we would just do, let's see here, items at 3 is equal to 4th item, and then we could iterate over it again and print out all of our names. String, let me get rid of this guy. And let's see here. So copy. So let's see here, we're missing a name. Why is that? Bob, Kate, Sammy. We're missing this 4th item. Okay, so it's because we're referring to this. We basically just have to use this items array right here because that's what we're actually changing. And so we change it, and now our array, we can put 4 items inside of it because we've allocated enough space. But if we try to do this again, for example, 5th item, then our program would once again crash because we only have 4 blocks of memory available, and now we're trying to access the 5th one. And so we would have to repeat the same process over by allocating, more space in memory, then filling it up again. And there are more efficient ways we could do it. We could have, for example, allocated maybe 8 blocks of memory, and so we would have some unused blocks of memory near the end of our array, but then we wouldn't have to reallocate that memory so often. This is in essence what ArrayLists do. So ArrayLists look like this. What's new ArrayList? Normally when we use ArrayLists, we're getting some compiler warnings right now because we're not specifying basically the kind of things we want to put on our array list. We're going to get to generic classes in a little bit, but I just want to show you guys the basics for how we use array lists. I think it'll make more sense when we look at generic classes later. Alright, so now we're going to add hello, and then we can just do items.add Willie, items.add Joey, add, and then we can very easily just loop through our array and then just do system.println object. So what's going on right now is this array list, because we're not specifying the kind of things we want to put inside of it, it's just defaulting to object. It's saying that, okay, everything that you're putting inside of this array list is an object. Every object, remember though, has this toString method, and string overrides the toString method, so we should, let's see here, yeah, we should just get this output. Hello, Willie and Joey. Okay, so let's get rid of these compiler errors. What we can do is we can specify that we want to put only strings inside of our array list. And this is advantageous because now if we try to do this, for example, .add, come on, 1, we're going to get a compiler error warning us that we can only put strings inside of our array list. If we didn't have this, notice what happens. If we didn't have this, then we don't get a compiler error when we try to add maybe like 1. We could maybe add something completely random. We could just add a random Java class like new thread, and then we could print it out and we would get some kind of random crazy data. That doesn't really make sense. By specifying that we're only going to be putting strings inside of our array list, we make our code safer. This is very similar to how whenever you create an array in Java, for example, if we create a string array, but we can only store strings in our string array, and this is intuitive, right? And similarly, if we create an int array, we can only store integers inside of our array. Same principle follows, but in order to specify this kind of like string type for our array list, we have to put it inside of these little, you could say like angle brackets. Okay, so let me get rid of this for loop now. Now if we do this, the compiler will automatically recognize that each item inside of this array list is a string, and so we'll be able to just access it directly using this string type in our for each loop. System.out.println item. Okay, so now array lists are advantageous also because we can just keep adding items onto the end of our array list. We can do add Sammy, and we can keep going. Doesn't matter. We can just keep going, and it'll automatically just keep resizing the internal array it contains. Now, let's see here. There are some very useful methods with ArrayLists. We can sort, for example, an array list by doing this: collections.sort, and now we can just do this. We can just sort the list of items by passing it into the sort method. And what happens is that if we do this, we're gonna that took a while. It's just gonna sort it in alphabetical order. And this works because the string class, remember we're putting strings inside of our array list, it overrides it basically has this thing called comparator. Now, if we add these unimplemented methods, the way a comparator works is it basically defines how you should sort items inside of like an array or a list. So let me let me get rid of all those compiler errors. So what happens is, remember, this is actually an anonymous inner class, if you remember from the previous videos. It's an anonymous inner class, and we have this one abstract method called compare. What this compare method does is it takes two strings. It takes O1 and O2, and it tries to compare them. If we say that this item should come before this item, if O1 should come before O2 in a list of items, then we return -1. So for example, if we can do this, let's see here. So if O1.car at 0 is less than O2.car at 0, then we return -1. And so what this is saying is, okay, if the character at index 0, so for example we have H here and we have W here, if this character's ASCII value, remember each character it's basically like a byte, right? And as you go up these characters, the byte value increases. So if you have a lower byte value for the character, then you have a smaller letter, so to speak. So a smaller letter just comes earlier in the alphabet. So if this character comes before this one, then we return -1, which indicates that O1 should come before O2 in a list of sorted items. Otherwise, we can return 1, which indicates that O1 should just, that indicates that O1 should come after O2. Whenever we care about ties, for example, suppose we had this, like HELLO and HILLY, the first characters are the same, right? So in case of a tie, we might want to go in further and examine the second letter, and then the third letter, fourth letter, and fifth letter, and so on. But if we had an exact tie, if we had maybe like this, then we return 0, and that that's generally like, okay, I don't really care which one comes before the other. Just choose the position randomly. So that's when we would return 0. Okay, so that was a brief introduction to ArrayLists. In the next video, we're going to be going over generic interfaces, or generic classes, and why we're allowed to put this string, or how and why basically we're allowed to put this string inside of these angly brackets, and why this all works. Alright, I'll see you guys then.